My name is Victoria Martinez, I'm 32 years old, and the moment my 18-year-old niece Sophia threw her red wine across my white designer dress at my birthday party and sneered, "Now you look as cheap as you really are," I knew our family was about to implode. What she didn't know was that her cruel public humiliation would trigger an investigation that exposed her mother's embezzlement, her father's affairs, and the lies they'd been telling about my success for years. By the time I was done, Sophia wasn't just apologizing, she was begging me not to press charges. Before we dive into this wild story of family jealousy and the revenge that destroyed an entire branch of my family tree, what do you think could make an 18-year-old so bitter that she'd attack her own aunt at a birthday celebration? Drop your theories in the comments below, and make sure to hit that like button and subscribe because this tale of family warfare gets absolutely insane. The secrets I uncovered about my sister's perfect family will blow your mind, and Sophia's final comeuppance is pure poetic justice. To understand why my niece felt entitled to humiliate me at my own birthday party, you need to know the story of two very different paths my sister Elena and I took in life. We grew up in a working-class Hispanic family in East Los Angeles, where our parents, Miguel and Carmen Martinez, worked multiple jobs to keep us fed and housed in a neighborhood that wasn't always safe. Elena was 3 years older than me and had always been considered the smart one in the family. She was valedictorian of her high school class, earned a full scholarship to UCLA, and graduated with a degree in business administration. Everyone expected Elena to be the success story of our family, the one who would lift us out of poverty and prove that hard work and education could overcome any obstacle. I, on the other hand, was seen as the creative one, a polite way of saying my family thought I was a dreamer who would never amount to much financially. I loved fashion, design, and art, spending hours sketching clothing designs and sewing alterations for neighbors to earn pocket money. While Elena studied business strategy, I was learning pattern making and fabric selection from YouTube videos and library books. Our parents invested everything in Elena's education and career prospects. They helped pay for her business school applications, bought her professional wardrobe, and even took out a second mortgage to help fund her MBA program. Meanwhile, my interest in fashion design was dismissed as a hobby that would never provide real income or stability. "Victoria, you need to be realistic about your future," Mom would say whenever I talked about fashion school or starting my own design business. "Art is nice, but Elena is going to be the one who takes care of this family. You should focus on finding a stable job with benefits." After college, Elena married David Thompson, a fellow business graduate who came from a wealthy white family in Pasadena. David's parents owned a successful consulting firm, and they offered Elena an entry-level position that came with excellent benefits and rapid advancement opportunities. Elena and David's wedding was an elaborate affair that David's family paid for, complete with a country club reception and honeymoon in Europe. They bought a beautiful house in an upscale suburb, drove luxury cars, and seemed to be living the perfect upper-middle-class lifestyle that our parents had always dreamed about. When Elena had Sophia, she became the golden grandchild who represented everything our family could achieve. Elena dressed Sophia in designer clothes, enrolled her in private schools, and made sure she had every advantage that money could provide. Sophia grew up believing she was superior to her extended family because of her father's wealth and her mother's education. Meanwhile, I was struggling to build my fashion design business from scratch. I worked as a seamstress during the day to pay rent on a tiny studio apartment, while spending evenings and weekends creating original designs and building a portfolio. I had no family financial support, no professional connections, and no safety net if my business failed. For years, Elena and her family looked down on my career choice with barely concealed condescension. At family gatherings, Elena would make comments like, "Victoria's still playing dress-up," or, "Maybe someday Victoria will get serious about a real career." Sophia learned to echo her mother's attitudes, referring to my work as Aunt Victoria's little hobby. The family dynamic was clear. Elena was the success story who'd married well and achieved financial stability, while I was the struggling artist who couldn't afford to buy birthday gifts for my niece that cost more than $50. But everything changed 5 years ago when my fashion designs started gaining attention on social media. What had begun as a side hustle posting outfit ideas on Instagram evolved into a full-scale online business with celebrity clients and international shipping. My unique designs caught the attention of fashion bloggers, then magazine editors, and eventually Hollywood stylists looking for original pieces for red carpet events. Within 3 years, my small design studio had expanded to a team of 12 employees, partnerships with major retailers, and annual revenues exceeding $2 million. I'd gone from struggling seamstress to successful entrepreneur, but I'd done it quietly without bragging to family or flaunting my newfound wealth. I bought a beautiful house in Santa Monica, drove a Tesla, and could finally afford the designer clothes I'd always admired. But I remained humble about my success, still shopping at Target for everyday items and treating my family to modest dinners at chain restaurants when we got together. Elena, meanwhile, was struggling with problems she kept hidden from the family. David's consulting business had been losing clients for years due to his drinking problem and unprofessional behavior. Their mortgage payments were becoming difficult to manage, Sophia's private school tuition was straining their budget, and Elena had secretly started borrowing money from various sources to maintain their lifestyle. But instead of being happy about my success or asking for help, Elena became increasingly resentful and competitive. She couldn't stand that her flighty little sister had achieved the kind of financial success that she'd always expected to have herself. The jealousy manifested in subtle ways at first. Elena would make passive-aggressive comments about how lucky I was to have stumbled into success, or how my business was probably just a trend that wouldn't last long-term. She'd critique my outfit choices, question my financial decisions, and find ways to diminish my achievements in front of family members. Sophia absorbed her mother's resentment and developed her own sense of entitlement and superiority. Despite her family's hidden financial struggles, she continued to expect expensive gifts, designer clothes, and luxury experiences that Elena could no longer afford. When Elena couldn't provide these things, Sophia would compare her mother unfavorably to me, creating additional tension and resentment. The situation came to a head during my 32nd birthday celebration, which I'd planned as a modest gathering at a nice restaurant with close family and friends. I wore a beautiful white dress that I'd designed myself, elegant, understated, and perfectly tailored to my body. I felt confident and happy, surrounded by people I loved and celebrating another year of personal and professional growth. That's when Sophia decided to publicly humiliate me in the most cruel and calculated way possible, not knowing that her moment of vindictive satisfaction would trigger a chain of events that would destroy her family's carefully constructed facade and expose years of lies, theft, and deception. The weeks leading up to my birthday party had been particularly tense within our family, though I didn't fully understand why at the time. Elena had been making increasingly bitter comments about my success, while Sophia had grown more entitled and openly hostile toward me during family gatherings. The breaking point came during our cousin Maria's wedding shower 2 weeks before my birthday. I'd worn a simple but elegant dress that I designed myself, nothing flashy or expensive looking, just a well-tailored piece in a beautiful coral color that complemented my skin tone. "Oh, Victoria," Elena said loud enough for other family members to hear, "did you make that dress yourself? It's so interesting. I guess when you can't afford real designer clothes, DIY is the next best thing." The comment stung because it was designed to humiliate me in front of our extended family while positioning Elena as the authority on fashion and quality. What Elena didn't know was that the simple dress she was mocking had cost me $400 in high-end fabric and had taken 20 hours of hand-stitching to create. It was worth more than most designer dresses in department stores, but Elena assumed it was cheap because I'd made it myself. Sophia joined in with her own cruel observation, "And Victoria, why don't you just buy normal clothes like everyone else? All your homemade stuff looks so obvious." I tried to laugh off their comments, but other family members noticed the hostility and started asking me privately if everything was okay with Elena's family. The tension was becoming obvious to everyone except Elena and Sophia, who seemed to think their attacks were subtle and justified. What I later learned was that Elena's financial situation had become desperate in the weeks before my birthday. David's drinking had cost him several major clients, their house was in pre-foreclosure, and Sophia's school had threatened to expel her for non-payment of tuition. Elena was borrowing money from credit cards to buy groceries and had secretly taken a second job working retail on weekends to help make ends meet. Meanwhile, my business was thriving. I just signed a licensing deal with a major retailer that would put my designs in stores nationwide, and I'd been featured in Vogue as one of the top young designers to watch. The contrast between my rising success and Elena's hidden struggles was driving her to levels of resentment that were becoming psychologically unhealthy. But Elena couldn't admit her financial problems to our family because she'd built her identity around being the successful sister who'd married well and achieved financial stability. Acknowledging that she needed help would shatter her self-image and expose the lies she'd been telling about her perfect life. So instead of asking for support or congratulating me on my achievements, Elena decided to try to tear down my success and make me feel ashamed of my accomplishments. She started spreading rumors to family members that my business was probably illegal or unethical in some way. How else could someone without proper education achieve so much so quickly? "I'm just worried about Victoria," Elena told our mother during a private conversation that I learned about later. "She's making all this money so fast, and she won't talk about her business model or her clients. Don't you think that's suspicious?" Elena planted seeds of doubt about my character and success, suggesting that I must be doing something wrong or dishonest to achieve financial success without a college degree or family connections. She wanted our parents to be suspicious of me rather than proud of my accomplishments. Sophia absorbed her mother's narrative and developed her own theory that I was somehow fake or pretending to be successful when I was actually just lucky or dishonest. In her 18-year-old mind, the fact that her family was struggling while I was thriving meant that something unfair was happening that needed to be corrected. The final trigger for Sophia's behavior at my birthday party was a conversation she'd overheard between Elena and David 3 days earlier. They'd been fighting about money, and David had suggested that Elena should ask me for a loan to help with their mortgage payments. "Absolutely not," Elena had screamed. "I am not begging my little sister for money. She's not better than us just because she got lucky with some stupid fashion trend. But Elena, Victoria is family. If she can help us avoid foreclosure. No. I won't give her the satisfaction of thinking she's more successful than me. We'll figure something else out." Sophia heard this conversation and became furious that her family was struggling while I was living comfortably. In her mind, I should be offering to help without being asked, and my failure to solve their problems was evidence of my selfishness and greed. She decided that my birthday party would be the perfect opportunity to put me in my place and show everyone that I wasn't as special or successful as I pretended to be. She planned the drink-throwing incident carefully, choosing red wine specifically because it would stain my white dress permanently and create maximum visual impact. What Sophia didn't anticipate was that her cruel public humiliation would trigger my own investigation into why Elena's family had become so hostile and desperate. The moment that wine hit my dress, I realized that something much deeper was happening in my sister's life, and I was determined to find out what it was. The truth I uncovered would be more shocking and devastating than anything I could have imagined, ultimately leading to criminal charges, family destruction, and consequences that would haunt Sophia for years to come. The restaurant fell completely silent after Sophia threw the wine. My beautiful white dress was stained bright red from the neckline to the hem, and the humiliation was searing. But what shocked me more than the physical attack was the look of pure satisfaction on Sophia's face as she watched the wine drip from my ruined outfit. "Oops," she said with fake innocence, though her smirk made it clear the attack was completely intentional. "I guess my hand slipped." Elena's reaction told me everything I needed to know about the family dynamics that had led to this moment. Instead of apologizing for her daughter's behavior or showing concern for my ruined dress, Elena actually looked pleased, as if Sophia had accomplished something they'd both been planning. "Maybe next time you won't try so hard to show off," Elena said quietly, but loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "This is what happens when you get too big for your britches." The cruelty and calculation behind their coordinated attack was breathtaking. This wasn't an impulsive teenage mistake, this was a planned humiliation designed to put me in my place, in front of family and friends. My friend Jessica, who'd been sitting next to me when the attack happened, immediately stood up and confronted Sophia. "Are you insane? Who does that to someone at their own birthday party?" "Someone who needed to be brought down a few pegs," Sophia replied with the kind of entitled arrogance that only comes from years of being protected from consequences. "Aunt Victoria acts like she's so much better than everyone else just because she has some money now. I was just reminding her where she comes from." That comment revealed the toxic mindset that Elena had cultivated in her daughter, the idea that my success was somehow an insult to their family rather than an achievement to be celebrated. They'd turned my accomplishments into evidence of my arrogance and their victimization. I excused myself to the bathroom to clean up as much wine as possible, but the dress was completely ruined. While I was trying to process what had just happened, my friend Marcus, who worked in private investigation, pulled me aside. "Victoria, I've been watching your sister's family all evening, and something is seriously wrong here," he said. This wasn't just teenage attitude, this was calculated cruelty. "There's something else going on." Marcus had noticed details that I'd missed in my shock and embarrassment. Elena's designer handbag was actually a knockoff, her jewelry looked expensive but was clearly costume pieces, and David had been drinking heavily while checking his phone constantly with an expression of mounting anxiety. "They're putting on a show," Marcus continued. "Everything about their appearance tonight screams financial desperation covered up with fake luxury goods. I think they're in serious trouble, and they're taking it out on you because you represent everything they wish they could be." That conversation planted the seed that would grow into a comprehensive investigation of Elena's family and their true circumstances. I realized that Sophia's attack wasn't just teenage cruelty, it was the manifestation of deeper family secrets that I needed to understand and address. I decided to leave my own birthday party rather than continue the celebration after being publicly humiliated by family members. But before I left, I made it clear to Elena that there would be consequences for what had happened. "I don't know what's going on in your family, Elena, but this behavior is unacceptable," I told her in front of our remaining relatives. "Sophia owes me an apology and replacement for this dress, and you owe me an explanation for why you allowed your daughter to attack me at my own birthday party." Elena's response was defensive and revealing. "Don't be so dramatic, Victoria. It was just an accident, and it's just a dress. You can afford to replace it with all the money you're making from your little business." The way she emphasized little business made it clear that Elena still didn't understand or respect what I'd built. Despite my success, she continued to view my career as somehow illegitimate or temporary compared to her traditional corporate background. Over the next week, I found myself unable to stop thinking about the incident and the family dynamics it had revealed. I started paying closer attention to Elena's social media posts, her comments during phone calls, and the inconsistencies in stories she told about her family's activities and financial situation. That's when I decided to take Marcus up on his offer to conduct a discreet investigation into Elena's circumstances. "Something doesn't add up about their lifestyle versus their apparent desperation," Marcus said when I asked for his help. "Let me dig a little deeper and see what's really going on." What Marcus discovered over the next 2 weeks was a web of financial deception, criminal activity, and family lies that explain not only Sophia's behavior at my birthday party, but years of increasingly hostile treatment from Elena's family. The investigation revealed that Elena and David were drowning in debt despite their affluent appearance, that Elena had been embezzling money from David's consulting firm to cover their expenses, and that they'd been lying to our family about their financial situation for years while secretly resenting my success. But the most shocking discovery was that Elena had been actively sabotaging my business relationships and spreading lies about me to potential clients in an attempt to damage my career and level the playing field between us. The evidence Marcus collected would not only explain Sophia's entitled cruelty, but provide grounds for criminal charges, civil lawsuits, and the complete destruction of Elena's carefully maintained facade of success and respectability. Marcus's investigation uncovered a level of deception and criminal activity that I never could have imagined from my own sister. What I'd assumed was simple jealousy and family tension was actually a sophisticated web of embezzlement, fraud, and deliberate sabotage that had been building for years. The financial picture Marcus painted was devastating. Elena and David were over $400,000 in debt, their house was 3 months behind on mortgage payments, and they were facing foreclosure within 60 days. David's consulting business was essentially bankrupt due to his alcoholism and unprofessional behavior, but they'd been hiding their financial collapse from everyone, including our parents. "Your sister has been living off credit cards and loans for the past 2 years, Marcus explained during our meeting at a coffee shop downtown. She's been using David's business accounts to cover personal expenses, which constitutes embezzlement. But that's not the worst part. The worst part was that Elena had been actively working to destroy my business success out of jealousy and desperation. She'd been contacting my clients with false information about my reliability, spreading rumors in professional networks about my business practices, and even creating fake social media accounts to post negative reviews of my designs. Marcus showed me screenshots of Elena's fake profiles, which she'd used to post one-star reviews on my business website claiming that I delivered poor quality work, missed deadlines, and had unprofessional attitudes toward clients. She'd also been sending anonymous emails to fashion bloggers and magazine editors, suggesting that my success was built on stolen designs and unethical business practices. She's been systematically trying to sabotage your reputation and career, Marcus continued. Some of your client cancellations and lost opportunities probably weren't random, they were the result of Elena's interference. The evidence included email screenshots where Elena had impersonated me to send unprofessional messages to potential clients, social media posts where she'd shared private family photos to make me look unprofessional, and even recordings of phone calls where she'd pretended to be a dissatisfied customer to discourage people from working with me. But perhaps the most shocking discovery was that Elena had been stealing money from our elderly parents to cover her family's expenses. She'd convinced Mom and Dad to give her access to their savings account for emergencies, then systematically withdrew thousands of dollars without their knowledge while telling them the money was for investment opportunities that would benefit the whole family. Your parents have lost about $35,000 to Elena's theft, Marcus revealed. She's been forging their signatures on withdrawal slips and covering it up by manipulating their monthly statements. They have no idea how much money she's stolen from them. The scope of Elena's crimes was staggering. She'd embezzled from David's business, stolen from our parents, committed identity theft by impersonating me online, and engaged in systematic harassment designed to destroy my career and reputation. All while maintaining the facade of being the successful, respectable sister who'd achieved the American dream. Marcus had also discovered the truth about Sophia's attitude and behavior. Far from being the spoiled rich girl she pretended to be, Sophia was actually attending public school after being expelled from her private academy for non-payment, working part-time at a fast food restaurant to help cover family expenses, and living in constant fear that her friends would discover her family's financial situation. Sophia's anger toward you isn't just teenage brattiness, Marcus explained. She's been raised to believe that your success somehow caused her family's problems. Elena has convinced her that if you weren't doing so well, there would be more opportunities and resources for their family. This twisted logic had turned Sophia against me in ways that were both heartbreaking and infuriating. Instead of seeing me as an example of what hard work could achieve, she'd been taught to view my accomplishments as theft of opportunities that rightfully belonged to her family. The wine-throwing incident at my birthday party suddenly made perfect sense. Sophia had been listening to Elena's resentment and conspiracy theories for years, absorbing the message that I was somehow cheating or taking advantage of the family. The public humiliation was her way of evening the score and putting me back in what she believed was my proper place. But Marcus had saved the most damaging evidence for last. Elena had been documenting her own crimes in text messages and email exchanges with David, creating a detailed record of their illegal activities and their plans to continue stealing from family members. She's been discussing the possibility of stealing your business ideas and starting a competing company. Marcus showed me screenshots of Elena's messages. She actually wrote about how easy it would be to copy your designs and undercut your prices since she understands your business model. The evidence Marcus had collected was more than enough to pursue criminal charges against Elena for embezzlement, theft, identity fraud, and harassment. It was also grounds for civil lawsuits that could recover the money she'd stolen and seek damages for the harm she'd caused to my business and reputation. But more importantly, the investigation had revealed that Sophia's cruelty at my birthday party was just the tip of the iceberg. Her entire family had been engaged in criminal activity while maintaining a facade of respectability and moral superiority over me. As I reviewed all the evidence Marcus had gathered, I realized that I had a choice to make. I could confront Elena privately and demand that she stop her criminal behavior and make restitution for the harm she'd caused. Or I could take the evidence to law enforcement and let the criminal justice system hold her accountable for years of theft, fraud, and sabotage. The decision became clear when Marcus showed me the most recent messages between Elena and David, where they were planning to escalate their attacks on my business and potentially involve other family members in their schemes. They're not going to stop, Marcus said bluntly. Elena views this as a war, and she's convinced herself that everything she's doing is justified because you've been unfairly successful. She needs to face serious consequences, or she's going to keep committing crimes against you and your family. That's when I made the decision that would change our family forever and ensure that Sophia's moment of cruel satisfaction at my birthday party would become the catalyst for complete justice and accountability. Can you believe that my own sister had been systematically sabotaging my business while stealing from our elderly parents? What would you do if you discovered that a family member had been committing crimes against you for years while pretending to be morally superior? Drop your thoughts in the comments because the next part reveals exactly how I used all this evidence to not just get justice, but to teach Sophia and Elena a lesson they'll never forget. Make sure you stay subscribed because the final confrontation is absolutely epic. With Marcus's evidence file in hand, I faced the most difficult decision of my life, whether to pursue criminal charges against my own sister or try to handle the situation within the family. The scope of Elena's crimes was so extensive that law enforcement involvement seemed inevitable, but I wanted to give her one chance to acknowledge her behavior and make things right. I decided to arrange a family meeting where I would confront Elena with the evidence and give her the opportunity to confess and seek help before I involved the authorities. I asked our parents to host a dinner at their house, presenting it as an opportunity to clear the air after the birthday party incident. What I didn't tell anyone was that I would be recording the entire conversation, both to protect myself and to document Elena's response to being confronted with proof of her crimes. Marcus had advised me to gather as much evidence as possible of Elena's state of mind and her willingness to accept responsibility for her actions. The dinner was scheduled for the following Sunday, giving me a week to prepare for what I knew would be the most confrontational conversation of our family's history. I consulted with an attorney about the criminal and civil implications of Elena's behavior, and I worked with a financial advisor to calculate the full extent of damages her sabotage had caused to my business. The numbers were staggering. Between lost clients, cancelled contracts, and damaged reputation, Elena's sabotage had cost my business an estimated $300,000 in revenue over the past 2 years. Combined with the money she'd stolen from our parents and the funds she'd embezzled from David's business, the total financial crimes exceeded $500,000. But beyond the financial impact, Elena's systematic harassment and sabotage had caused emotional trauma that was harder to quantify. I'd spent months questioning my own competence and business judgment when clients canceled unexpectedly or opportunities fell through mysteriously. I'd wondered if I was somehow failing to meet professional standards or if my success was less legitimate than I'd believed. Learning that these setbacks were actually the result of Elena's deliberate sabotage was both relieving and infuriating. My business instincts and professional capabilities were sound. I'd been fighting against an enemy I didn't even know existed. Sunday evening arrived with a tension that was palpable from the moment Elena's family walked into our parents' house. Sophia was sulking and hostile, clearly annoyed at having to spend time with me after the birthday party incident. Elena was putting on her usual performance of warm sisterly affection, hugging me and asking about my business as if she hadn't been systematically trying to destroy it for years. David looked exhausted and anxious, checking his phone constantly and drinking more wine than anyone else at the table. I realized he was probably aware of Elena's criminal activities and was living in constant fear of being discovered and facing legal consequences. Our parents, Miguel and Carmen, were clearly uncomfortable with the family tension but hopeful that whatever had caused the birthday party incident could be resolved through honest conversation and mutual understanding. They had no idea that their eldest daughter had been stealing from them while sabotaging their youngest daughter's career. After dinner, I asked Elena to join me in the living room for a private conversation. "We need to talk about what happened at my birthday party and some other things that have come to my attention," I said, turning on the recording app on my phone discreetly. Elena's initial response was dismissive and defensive. "Victoria, you're being way too sensitive about a simple accident. Sophia is 18 years old, teenagers make mistakes. You're acting like she committed a crime by spilling some wine. Elena, we both know it wasn't an accident. Sophia deliberately threw wine on my dress and made a cruel comment about how I look cheap. But that's not even why I wanted to talk to you." That's when I began presenting Marcus's evidence, starting with the fake social media profiles Elena had created to post negative reviews of my business. I showed her screenshots of the fake accounts, the one-star reviews she'd written, and the emails she'd sent to my clients under false pretenses. Elena's face went white as she realized the scope of evidence I'd collected. Where did you get this information? She demanded. Have you been spying on me? I hired a private investigator after your daughter's attack at my birthday party made me realize that something serious was wrong with our family dynamic, I replied. The investigator found evidence of criminal activity that goes far beyond fake reviews and harassment. I continued presenting evidence systematically: the embezzlement from David's business, the theft from our parents' savings account, the identity fraud she'd committed by impersonating me online, and the systematic campaign to damage my professional reputation. With each piece of evidence, Elena became more desperate and defensive. She tried to deny the accusations, then minimize their significance, then blame external circumstances for forcing her into criminal behavior. You don't understand the pressure we've been under, Elena finally said when confronted with proof of stealing from our parents. David's business has been struggling, and we were going to lose everything. I was going to pay the money back as soon as things got better. Elena, you've stolen over $35,000 from Mom and Dad's retirement savings. You've embezzled money from David's business. You've been sabotaging my career for years out of jealousy. These aren't desperate mistakes, they're systematic crimes. That's when Elena's mask finally came off completely. You want to know why I did it? She screamed. Because nothing has ever been fair between us. You got lucky with some stupid fashion trend while I did everything right, got an education, married well, worked hard, and I'm still struggling while you get to play dress up and make millions. So you decided to steal from our elderly parents and sabotage my business? I decided to level the playing field. You think you're so much better than everyone else now that you have money. You needed to be reminded that you're still just the little sister who couldn't afford college without help. Elena's confession was even more comprehensive than I'd hoped. She admitted to the embezzlement, the theft from our parents, the sabotage of my business relationships, and the systematic harassment campaign she'd been conducting for years. But most importantly, she showed absolutely no remorse for her actions and made it clear that she would continue her criminal behavior if given the opportunity. Are you going to make restitution for the money you've stolen and the damage you've caused to my business? I asked, giving Elena one final opportunity to take responsibility and avoid criminal prosecution. I'm not giving you a penny, Elena replied. You have enough money to absorb whatever losses you think I caused. And I'm certainly not apologizing for putting you back in your place. That response made my decision easy. Elena had shown that she was unrepentant, unwilling to make amends, and would likely continue her criminal behavior if not stopped by legal intervention. She'd forfeited any consideration for family loyalty by her years of deliberate crimes and her complete lack of accountability. The next morning, I took Marcus's evidence file to the police station and filed criminal complaints against Elena for embezzlement, identity theft, harassment, and elder abuse. I also consulted with a civil attorney about recovering the money she'd stolen and seeking damages for the harm her sabotage had caused to my business and reputation. But Elena wasn't the only family member who would face consequences for the birthday party incident and the crimes it had exposed. Sophia's cruel attack had been the catalyst that uncovered years of criminal activity, and she was about to learn that actions have consequences even when you're 18 years old and think you're untouchable. Within 48 hours of filing criminal complaints against Elena, the investigation expanded in ways that shocked even me. Detective Sarah Rodriguez, who specialized in financial crimes, reviewed Marcus's evidence and immediately recognized patterns that suggested even more extensive criminal activity than we'd initially discovered. Your sister didn't just steal from your parents and sabotage your business, Detective Rodriguez explained during our follow-up meeting. She's been running sophisticated financial fraud schemes that involve multiple victims and substantial amounts of money. The police investigation revealed that Elena had been using her business education and professional connections to prey on elderly clients of David's consulting firm. She'd convinced several of David's former clients to invest in fake business opportunities, stealing over $150,000 from retirees who trusted her because of her professional appearance and family connections. Elena had also been running a credit card fraud scheme where she would apply for credit cards using stolen identity information, then max out the cards before abandoning them and moving on to new victims. The postal inspector estimated that Elena had stolen over $50,000 through this scheme alone. But perhaps the most shocking discovery was that Sophia had been involved in some of Elena's criminal activities. Police found evidence that Sophia had been helping her mother create fake social media accounts, post negative reviews of my business, and even assist with some of the credit card fraud by posing as younger victims when applying for credit accounts. We're looking at potential charges against your niece for conspiracy, fraud, and harassment, Detective Rodriguez informed me. She's 18, which means she'll be charged as an adult if we can prove she was a willing participant in these schemes. The news that Sophia faced criminal charges was both satisfying and heartbreaking. Her cruelty at my birthday party was no longer just teenage attitude, it was evidence of someone who'd been raised to believe that criminal behavior was acceptable as long as you didn't get caught. Elena's arrest made the local news because of the scope of her crimes and the number of victims involved. The headline, "Local Businesswoman Arrested for Elder Fraud and Identity Theft," was accompanied by Elena's mugshot and details about the investigation that had begun with a family dispute at a birthday party. The media attention was devastating for Elena's carefully maintained image of respectability and success. Friends, neighbors, and former colleagues learned that the woman they'd admired for her professional accomplishments was actually a criminal who'd been preying on elderly victims and sabotaging her own sister's business. David's consulting firm immediately terminated Elena's employment and began their own internal investigation into missing funds and potential client fraud. Several of David's former clients came forward with their own stories of Elena's investment scams, expanding the criminal case even further. But the most satisfying moment came when Sophia realized that her mother's arrest and criminal charges would have serious consequences for her own future. The private school that had expelled her for non-payment was now considering filing their own fraud charges after learning that Elena had been stealing money to cover tuition costs. More importantly, Sophia's college applications were in jeopardy because several universities had policies against admitting students with criminal backgrounds or whose families were involved in financial crimes. Her dream of attending USC's film school was threatened by her mother's criminal behavior and her own potential charges. 3 weeks after Elena's arrest, Sophia showed up at my house unannounced, crying and begging for help. The entitled, cruel teenager who'd thrown wine on my dress had been replaced by a scared young woman who was finally facing the consequences of her family's criminal behavior. "Aunt Victoria, please," Sophia sobbed on my doorstep. "I need your help. Mom's lawyer says I might go to prison too, and USC is threatening to rescind my admission. I can't have my whole life ruined because of what Mom did." The irony was overwhelming. 3 weeks earlier, Sophia had publicly humiliated me and told me I looked cheap at my own birthday party. Now she was standing on my doorstep in tears, begging the same aunt she'd attacked to save her from the consequences of her own criminal actions. "Sophia, you participated in your mother's schemes to sabotage my business and defraud innocent people," I said calmly. "You helped create fake accounts to post negative reviews about my work. You were present when she planned ways to damage my reputation. These aren't things that happened to you, these are things you chose to do. But I was just doing what Mom told me to do. I didn't understand how serious it was. You're 18 years old, Sophia. You understood exactly what you were doing when you helped your mother commit identity fraud and when you threw wine on my dress while calling me cheap. You made deliberate choices to hurt people, and now you're facing the consequences." Sophia's desperation was palpable, but I wasn't interested in enabling her the way Elena had been enabled for years. She needed to understand that criminal behavior had serious consequences, regardless of her age or family connections. "What do you want from me, Sophia? An apology? Or do you want me to lie to the police and prosecutors to protect you from the consequences of your own actions?" "I want you to tell them that I was just following Mom's orders, that I didn't know what we were doing was illegal," Sophia pleaded. "You could say that I was manipulated and didn't understand the consequences. But that wouldn't be true, would it? You knew exactly what you were doing when you helped create those fake accounts. You knew you were lying when you posted negative reviews about my business. And you definitely knew you were being cruel when you attacked me at my birthday party." The conversation continued for over an hour, with Sophia alternating between desperate pleading and angry accusations. She blamed Elena for dragging her into the criminal schemes, blamed David for not stopping Elena's behavior, and even blamed me for making the family jealous by being successful. But what Sophia never did was take genuine responsibility for her own choices or show authentic remorse for the harm she'd caused. Her regret was entirely self-focused. She was sorry she'd been caught and faced consequences, but not sorry for the victims of her family's crimes. "Sophia, I'm not going to lie to protect you from the consequences of criminal behavior," I told her finally. "But I will tell the truth about what I know, including the fact that Elena manipulated and enabled your worst impulses instead of teaching you right from wrong." 2 weeks later, the district attorney's office offered Sophia a plea bargain that would allow her to avoid prison time in exchange for cooperating with the investigation against Elena and completing community service and counseling programs. The plea agreement would also require Sophia to make a public apology and pay restitution for her role in the harassment campaign against my business. Sophia's attorney advised her to accept the plea, but Sophia initially refused because she didn't want to admit guilt publicly or pay restitution to me. She was still operating under the delusion that she was the victim of unfair treatment rather than the perpetrator of criminal activity. That delusion lasted until her college acceptance was officially rescinded and she realized that her criminal charges would follow her for the rest of her life. Faced with the choice between accepting responsibility and facing even more serious consequences, Sophia finally agreed to the plea bargain. The public apology took place at a community center with local media present, creating a permanent record of Sophia's acknowledgement of her criminal behavior and its impact on innocent victims. "I want to apologize to my Aunt Victoria for participating in schemes to damage her business and reputation," Sophia read from a prepared statement, her voice shaking with humiliation. "I also want to apologize for my cruel behavior at her birthday party, where I deliberately threw wine on her dress and made hurtful comments. I understand now that my actions were wrong and caused real harm to someone who never did anything to deserve such treatment." The apology felt forced and hollow, but it was legally binding and created a record that would follow Sophia if she ever tried to minimize or deny her role in Elena's crimes. Elena, meanwhile, was facing much more serious consequences. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and prosecutors were seeking a sentence of 8 to 12 years in federal prison for the elder fraud, identity theft, and embezzlement charges. Her plea negotiations had stalled because she continued to maintain that her crimes were somehow justified by family circumstances and financial pressure. But the final piece of justice came when the civil lawsuits I'd filed against Elena began yielding results. The court ordered Elena to pay full restitution to all victims of her fraud, including the $300,000 in damages her sabotage had caused to my business, the $35,000 she'd stolen from our parents, and additional damages for emotional distress and punitive measures. Elena's house was foreclosed and sold to partially satisfy the judgment, her remaining assets were seized, and she would be required to pay additional restitution from any future earnings for the rest of her life. Her dreams of financial success and social respectability had been completely destroyed by her own criminal choices. The most satisfying moment came 6 months later when I received a letter from Elena in prison, where she was serving her 10-year sentence for fraud and elder abuse. "Victoria," the letter began, "I hope you're satisfied with destroying our family and ruining Sophia's future over some spilled wine and hurt feelings." Even from prison, facing the consequences of years of criminal behavior, Elena still couldn't accept responsibility for her choices or acknowledge the harm she'd caused to innocent people. She continued to view herself as the victim of unfair treatment rather than the perpetrator of systematic crimes against her own family members and vulnerable elderly victims. But I didn't need Elena's acknowledgement or apology to feel satisfied with the outcome. Justice had been served, criminals had faced appropriate consequences, and other potential victims had been protected from Elena's fraudulent schemes. 2 years after that fateful birthday party, my life had transformed in ways I never could have imagined. What started as a humiliating family incident had ultimately led to justice being served, criminals facing consequences, and me gaining a deeper understanding of my own strength and resilience. Elena was serving her 10-year federal sentence at a minimum security prison facility, where she'd become a cautionary tale about how family jealousy and financial desperation could lead to criminal behavior. She'd lost her house, her reputation, her freedom, and any respect she'd once had from family and friends. Most importantly, Elena's victims had received justice. The elderly clients she'd defrauded through fake investment schemes had recovered their money through court-ordered restitution. Our parents had been repaid for the theft from their retirement savings, though they were still processing the emotional trauma of learning that their eldest daughter had been stealing from them for years. Sophia had completed her community service and counseling programs, but the consequences of her criminal charges would follow her for years. Her college plans had been derailed, her job prospects were limited by her criminal record, and she'd had to rebuild her entire understanding of right and wrong after years of being raised to believe that criminal behavior was acceptable if you didn't get caught. But perhaps the most significant change was in Sophia's attitude toward me and her understanding of family relationships. The counseling she'd received as part of her plea agreement had helped her recognize how Elena's manipulation and enabling had distorted her worldview and turned her against family members who'd never done anything to harm her. 6 months after her public apology, Sophia reached out to me with a letter that was very different from her desperate pleading when she'd first been arrested. "Aunt Victoria," the letter began, "I know my apology at the community center was required by the court, but I want to write you a real apology now that I understand what I did and why it was so wrong." Sophia's letter went on to acknowledge the specific ways she'd participated in Elena's crimes, the cruelty she'd shown at my birthday party, and the years of disrespectful treatment she directed toward me based on Elena's manipulation and lies. "I understand now that you never did anything to deserve the way we treated you," Sophia wrote. "You worked hard for your success, and instead of being proud of what you accomplished, Mom taught me to resent you and see your achievements as somehow taking away from our family." The letter was genuine in ways that her court-ordered apology had not been, showing that Sophia had genuinely processed the harm she'd caused and developed some understanding of how family relationships should actually work. But while I appreciated Sophia's growth and genuine remorse, I wasn't ready to fully rebuild our relationship. Trust, once broken through deliberate cruelty and criminal behavior, couldn't be restored through letters and counseling sessions alone. It would take years of consistent respectful behavior for Sophia to prove that she'd truly changed. The impact on our extended family was complex and sometimes painful. Some relatives blamed me for destroying the family by pursuing criminal charges against Elena instead of handling the situation privately. They believed that family loyalty should have trumped legal accountability, regardless of the crimes involved. But other family members supported my decision and expressed regret that Elena's behavior had been enabled and excused for so long. They recognized that pursuing justice wasn't about revenge, it was about protecting victims and ensuring that criminal behavior faced appropriate consequences. Our parents struggled most with the aftermath of Elena's crimes and incarceration. They'd spent years being proud of their successful daughter and celebrating her achievements, only to learn that her lifestyle had been built on theft, fraud, and manipulation. The cognitive dissonance was overwhelming and required extensive counseling for them to process. "We failed both of you in different ways," Dad told me during one of our conversations about the family situation. "We put too much pressure on Elena to be the family success story, and we didn't appreciate your achievements enough. Maybe if we'd been more balanced, Elena wouldn't have felt so desperate to maintain her image." But I didn't blame our parents for Elena's criminal behavior. Adults are responsible for their own choices, regardless of family pressure or childhood experiences. Elena had made deliberate decisions to steal from vulnerable people and sabotage her own sister's career, and she deserved to face the full consequences of those choices. The business impact of exposing Elena's sabotage was overwhelmingly positive. Once her fake reviews were removed and her harassment campaign stopped, my company's reputation recovered quickly. Several clients who'd canceled contracts after receiving Elena's fake communications reached out to apologize and resume working with me. More importantly, the media coverage of Elena's crimes had actually increased awareness of my business among potential customers who admired my resilience and professionalism in handling the situation. My revenue had increased by 40% in the 2 years since Elena's arrest, partly due to the publicity but mostly because I was no longer fighting against systematic sabotage. I'd also used the experience to develop new business practices around reputation management and client communication that had strengthened my company's professional relationships and operational procedures. The most valuable lesson I learned was about the importance of trusting my instincts and investigating situations that didn't make sense. For years, I'd accepted client cancellations and lost opportunities as normal business challenges, never suspecting that they were the result of deliberate sabotage by someone I trusted. But Sophia's wine-throwing incident had been so shocking and inexplicable that it forced me to look deeper into my family's dynamics and uncover the truth about Elena's criminal behavior. If I'd continued accepting her sabotage as normal business fluctuation, Elena would have kept stealing from our parents and defrauding other victims while destroying my reputation and career. The experience had also taught me about the difference between family loyalty and enabling criminal behavior. Some relatives had criticized me for betraying Elena by involving law enforcement, but protecting criminals from consequences isn't loyalty, it's complicity that allows harm to continue. True family loyalty means holding each other accountable for harmful behavior and ensuring that family members get help for destructive patterns before they hurt more people. Elena needed to face consequences for her crimes in order to understand the seriousness of her choices and begin any process of genuine rehabilitation. As I reflected on the journey from that humiliating birthday party to Elena's imprisonment and Sophia's accountability, I realized that sometimes the worst things that happen to us become catalysts for positive change and justice. So here's my question for all of you. Have you ever had family members who resented your success or tried to sabotage your achievements out of jealousy? How do you handle relatives who think your accomplishments somehow take away from their own opportunities? I'd love to hear your stories and strategies in the comments below. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like and subscribe for more real-life stories about family betrayal, resilience, and justice. Share this video with anyone who might be dealing with jealous family members or suspicious business setbacks. Sometimes what looks like bad luck is actually deliberate sabotage that needs to be investigated. Thank you for following my journey from victim to survivor to successful entrepreneur. Remember that you don't have to accept disrespectful treatment from anyone, even family members, and that success achieved through hard work and integrity is always worth celebrating and protecting. The wine that Sophia threw on my dress that night was meant to humiliate me and put me back in my place. Instead, it exposed years of criminal behavior and ultimately led to justice for multiple victims. Sometimes the cruelest attacks against us become the very thing that brings truth to light and ensures that wrongdoers face appropriate consequences. Take care of yourselves, trust your instincts, and never let anyone convince you that you deserve to be treated with disrespect because of your achievements. Your success is something to be proud of, not something to apologize for or hide from jealous family members.